Okay, so for one of the last things we're going to talk about is first we're going to talk about how to handle decals within Unreal Engine. One of the first ways of handling it is through Unreal Engine's built-in system of decals. Um, Before you start creating the actual material or shader, depending on the version you have, make sure you go into your settings. Go to the top right here where it says search details and type a decal and make sure that this is set up. It will require you to restart your project, but what it is decal materials naturally when you start applying them, if they're not debuffer decals, they won't be affected by anything lighting related, like shadows and stuff. So they won't actually render inside the shadows, but they'll render with any direct light source. Um, when these are applied debuffer wise, it allows them to be placed in shadows and actually be rendered fully. So make sure that's already set up. By default, I think 4.26 does already have it set up. But next, let's go in here. I'm gonna save because I brought in a bunch of decals. How I have my decals set up is I have all of the alpha stuff in the albedo. So I have everything set up with DC for decal in their naming convention. So first off, let's go in here and then let's go to our materials and let me create a new material. And this one's going to be called decal underscore mmat. And then let's bring our base textures in. So base albedo, and then we're going to do base and normal. You can bring in others, but for now, I'm just going to do this one simple as this. So let's go set to our material. Let's change our material domain to a deferred decal. And then you have to change your shading model from default. Actually, not that one. It's this one. Decal blend mode. No, blend mode. There it is. Yeah, translucent. I always get confused because I see translucent once. So we're gonna go in here. I'm gonna change these to some parameters. So this one's gonna be our albedo, and then this one's gonna be our normal parameter. We're gonna plug our normal in. We're gonna plug our albedo in. We're gonna plug the alpha for the albedo in. And then let's go in here and you can actually change the different types of decal blends. There's ones that are just normal related. There are ones that are just emissives. Stains, which is just like a bit of albedo. Um, there's other ones that are just like either color or color normal or color roughness, like different values of it. By default, this normal translucent one does give you the metallic and all the other ones, but essentially, I want these to be as optimized as possible. So I'm just going to use this one, the debuffer, color, and normal, because that's all I'm going to need for now. These guys usually they're not going to have that much of a roughness change to them. So let's go and first let's go to our material and where is it at? To decal. There we go. And let me create an instance, and this one's going to be called graffiti underscore imat. So also, depending on how old the version of Unreal Engine you have, you might not actually be able to use an instance for this guy. Um, that was one of the original problems when I was working in Unreal Engine with decals was that you actually had to just use a normal material and have to set it up every single time. There's no way to create an instance to it. I mean, here you can change certain blending modes, but you can't go in and change that it's in a decal. But now you actually can. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drag in. You can either drag in the master of the decal or even the instance. And when you do, it creates a cube-shaped volume that you can actually move around, rotate, even size up if you want to. Oh, let me see. I think I know what happened here. Not bring in my alpha. That's interesting. Verify. Hit save as Targa replace 32-bit, baby. There we go. I'm probably gonna have to do that for all the other ones I brought in, but there we go. So this is a basic decal. So this one doesn't have any type of normal information. So it's gonna take whatever normal information is like already there. So be very wary of what you're applying to the surface. So like with this guy, it's it's got tessellation, so it's gonna use the geometry from that one. But then when you get to parallax occlusion ones, that those ones can get kind of finicky. So be aware that sometimes they, depending on the settings, you might have it have a, weird parallaxing problem. Maybe it's moving without moving with the ground. But the cool thing is that it's not just to one surface; you can actually blend it to multiple ones. Just be aware of the kind of extreme angles. Like if you want to, you can actually rotate this guy, and then you'll actually get better angles on it. But it can only do so much. And then if you want to, this arrow shows you where the projection is actually going to be placed. So depending on how closer it is to a surface, the more intense the blend is going to be. And then the further away, the further it starts to fade away. So that's one way of setting it up. Let's go ahead and let's create another instance. And this one we're going to do debris underscore I'm at. Go back to my textures and make sure that other one has the texture brought in. Yeah, he has his texture brought in, so that's good. Boom and boom. Turn that on first. Boom. Now let's go about dragging it in. So it doesn't have to always be like a color um, type of blend. It can also be these types of, um, in a sense, fake decals where it's making it look like there's actually a surface to this guy. Um, Again, one issue is that there's no ambient occlusion to him. There's no self shadowing. So these are some of the limitations that you're going to get with this guy. Um, One way you can do is you can actually bring in like ambient occlusion by multiplying with the albedo, or even going into here and making the adjustment to like the ambient occlusion version. But again, the ambient occlusion version only just gives you ambient occlusion. So like it's kind of limited, so you have to be very aware of which one you do. Also, you have to make different versions of this one. So you can make an instance of it, but you can't make an instance of you can't go in and change the settings on these guys. So be very aware of how you set these guys up. Another way you can also go about kind of making and giving more depth to this is you can actually apply parallax values to this guy. If you want to, you can actually go in. Let me grab I think the parallax one's in the textures folder. Yes. Just do be very aware that again, it's expensive to have decals as is. You can only do a certain amount before it really starts taking up before it starts taking up performance. Like you only do I think like 3 or 4 blends on top of each other before it really is like, hey, don't do anymore. But let's go in and let's just actually maybe not that one. This one. Don't think there's I think I do have a height map. Gotcha. orbit. Let me go and import him in. That one, it's this one. And then height. Let me make sure he's all set up. Compression to grayscale. Oh, we got a warning. Here we go. Okay, so that took care of that problem. And now let's go in and start playing around with some of this parallax valuing. 0.03. And then let's just adjust some of the plane height so it doesn't seem like it's floating. As you can obviously tell, it's already kind of chugging a little bit. It's because, like I said, this can be very expensive. See, this is also the cool thing when it comes to parallaxing. It actually gives off that fake depth to it, so it actually occludes and actually kind of fakes off information in a sense. So let me do maybe zero point zero 0.07. Do it's 0.03 again. And let's hit play. Let's see what this guy looks like. Yeah. So again, it's another thing to be aware of is just you might get the issue of floating geo. It's just one thing to be aware of when you're starting to play around with this stuff. And even from like this guy's angle, it looks good. It gives off that fake, like this is an actual piece of decal. If you use these very sparingly, every like once in a while, maybe it would work very well. But just beware of like you can't use this for every single thing, especially when you're working with other parallax stuff. So be aware that also if you're using like a flat plane, it will project underneath it as well. So there are small limitations to this stuff. But also like I said, be very aware when you're setting these guys up. So every time you bring one in, it changes the sorting to be that the next one is going to be the topmost. Usually, it's the topmost layer. If you want to, you can actually go in and change your sorting order to be this one. So whatever has the highest number will always be the one on the top. So this one's set to 4, whereas like this one's set to 0, but you can set it to 2, or even this one. This one's the first one. I can set him to 5 and him go right to the top. So that's how you would choose your sorting order and just choose which one you want it to be. But again, be very aware of like your performance. So if we go into our shader complexity value stuff, it's going to calculate real quick. Oh, it's only this one's actually the problem. Okay. Naturally, you would always have an issue when it comes to blending this stuff. So that's good that we're not having such a huge spike on it, especially the fact that it's parallax. And then, of course, you can always use these guys not just for like these big pieces. You can always use it for small things too, like like applying small things over like maybe you want to add like paint lines, or instead of having to paint over certain types of details like with like vertex painting or weight painting, you can always just go in here and just apply one of these guys and just scale them down a bit, help them break up repetition. Like let me go in and make one more. This one's gonna be for plaster. Turn off all these guys. Boom. You always have some, simple ones like these guys where you can just do small changes or small things to help break up repetition as well. If you're creating like brick walls, you can use these guys to find ways to either hide seams or hide that one detail that's like very repetitive. These things are very foolproof and they help out a lot. So just be aware of one, how it blends with the object. You also might notice, like in some cases, like if I bring this guy back on over, like you might notice that you subtly can see some of the normal map detail on this guy. And it's not just normal map detail, it's also this material has ambient occlusion. So it's going to try and blend that ambient occlusion with all these decals and stuff. So that naturally also can be a problem. If you have like a very flat version of this guy but has no ambient occlusion, you'll notice the ambient occlusion of whatever the surface is below it. So that's another issue that you got to make sure you take a look at and take care of. Yeah, just play around with these guys. Find what do you think would be like the right thing to have. Oh yeah, right here. This is actually a good example of it. You can actually see there's more normal information taking over on from this decal, but you'll see the ambient occlusion from this guy taking over instead. Versus like here, it's not just that; it's the actual mesh itself. So since this is flat geo, you're only going to see that stuff. But that is essentially Unreal Engine's deferred and debuffered decals.